I am really excited to be able to do this, to talk to you, I feel like it's somewhat, I won't say a full circle moment because full circle, I feel like you and I would be talking about like coding related stuff because full circle
Okay.
for me, that was our introduction.
Yes.
For everyone who is listening, my esteemed guest today is Arionne Nettles, who I will let her, list off her many, 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 many things that she's done. But for me, Ariane was my professor, one of my professors when I was in grad school. Was it intro to coding
Yeah, it was like
or
foundations of interactive
yeah,
journalism.
that's
Yeah.
what it was. It was a lot of Code Academy. That was my introduction to HTML, CSS, all of
Hmm.
that stuff. And I remember now at the time being like, dang, I just cannot get this stuff. Um, that was nearly 5 years ago, which is crazy to think. God. But in these 5 years, you'll be proud of me because I feel like I have, kept going. I feel like you, yeah, sort of turn the light switch when it comes to interactives and data and stuff like that. And subsequently, like I've gone to NICAR 3 times. I now am pretty adept with things like
Mhm.
SQL and spreadsheets. Actually taught at NICAR twice in March when I just went. Um, Now, do I have CSS down? No, but I'm okay at
And that's totally fine.
HTML.
I'm very proud of you.
Oh, thanks. A little bit of Python here and there. So I'm like, wow, I probably am not where you are. I can't make a site from scratch still, yet.
The thing is,
But I'll get
most
there
people do not have to build a site from scratch, right? It's really just the practice. That's why we do it, just for practice, to see how all the pieces work together.
because at the time, man, them pieces, they weren't coming together for me. But I think that's the testament to data and interactives. It's been a journey of 5 years, but that's not even what we're here to talk about. Because even though when I met you, Ariane, you were teaching at Medill, at Northwestern, and that was still very much, you were running the Medill report site and everything, but that is
Yeah.
not in the last 5 years where life has taken you. So I'm going to stop talking and let you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm Arionne Nettles. I am the Garth C. Reeves Eminent Scholar Chair and instructor for digital journalism here at Florida A&M University, which is my alma mater. I also went to Medill for grad school as well, and I was in the same program as you, Grace. And so that's why I started working there and got lucky enough to connect with you and many other Medill grads. But I'm back at my first alma mater down in Tallahassee, and I am the author of We Are the Culture, Black Chicago's Influence on Everything, as well as Journalism for Dummies.
Beautiful. And we are going to be talking about um we are the culture because it's not about me. This is, of course, a platform for NABJCC members and I would say also Black media in Chicago doing really
Yeah.
good things, really
Oh,
impactful things. So when we were talking about this, I'm like, well, I have to talk to Ariane. Why wouldn't I? Um, because this book, like, let me pull up my questions here. I went to your talk that you had at the King Branch about 2-ish months ago, and the book is
yeah.
thick. It's a thick book. It's a lot of stuff in this book.
It's a big
Um,
book, yeah.
it's a
Not
big
too
book.
big, but it's not a little pamphlet either, yeah.
So I think first question, of course, is what made you want to write this book? Like, as native Chicagoans, like we
Mhm.
know our culture is everything. But I guess, yeah, what was the spark that was like, okay, it's more than us saying it. If you know, you know. I want to make this, I want to write this down now.
Yeah, so, I knew that I wanted to write a book. And I wanted the book to be something that I knew about. So maybe something that I studied, but definitely something that I knew about. I didn't want my first book to be something that was all theoretical, and nothing that I experienced and lived. And I felt like there's so much in Chicago that we don't even know or that I'm still learning. There's so much that I've learned since the book came out even, right? So, I thought that that would be a fun project to try to touch on some of the ways that Black Chicago in particular has been really influential.
Can you talk about while you were doing, the research for your book, was there something that you came across or discovered this like a pivotal moment that you feel deepened your already really deep connection to the Black cultural legacy here in Chicago?
I think really diving deep into Johnson Publishing Company really helped me in particular. I think because I'm a journalist, I had already done a lot of research on the Chicago Defender newspaper. So I did know about that, but I think I realized that I had no idea just how influential Johnson Publishing Company was. Ebony and Jet, and also Negro Digest is kind of in the mix there. And I just really didn't know about it. I knew just kind of the surface stuff, the building. I had seen pictures of it in its heyday, and I knew growing up about how influential Ebony and Jet were, but I did not know just how deep that influence was truly worldwide. And so just learning more about that, hearing more of the stories and learning more about John Johnson and Eunice Johnson as people really, really kind of deepened my appreciation for Chicago's place, I guess, in the media landscape.
What about as you were doing the research, do you feel, or maybe even like you said, since you've published the book and have learned more things, what cultural contributions do you feel is sort of underappreciated from Chicago nationally? Like people just, they don't really give us our just due.
Yeah, I know that this is probably not the right answer to just say everything, but I do think that there are so many things that people just don't know that Chicago was a part of. So, for example, music, definitely. I think when people think about music, they think about New York and LA. And recently, in the past 20 years, Atlanta has been in that mix, then Houston, but people really don't think about Chicago, and so much of the music industry was here. Same with the film industry, right? At the turn of the century, Chicago was a place, but the turn of the 19th century, well, 20th century, right? At around that time, right? So many of the movies were being made here, and then also maybe New York because there was no Hollywood yet. So early 1900s, that's where they were making it, right? Chicago being this place that's in the middle of the country, it's easy to get to from any coast. And so I think that people just they don't have any idea of our influence in those types of areas.
um, Actually, speaking of the influences, like what are some, I guess, contemporary, I'm trying to think, like aside from, we have our, I joke around with my friends, we have our Chicago shows, like the Chicago Med, Fire, PD,
Yeah, yeah, uh-huh.
The Shy, like I'm trying to think, Shameless, like other shows that
Hmm,
have been
hmm.
set in the city. I actually have not seen any of these shows
Okay.
because I don't know. I feel weird about watching
Uh-huh.
shows that are set here in the city. And
Yeah.
then when I'm watching it, like things don't make sense. Like, I don't know, you're talking about the intersection of Halsted and Ashland, but I know these streets don't intersect or something like
Yeah.
that. So is there, aside from these really big, I guess the shows that have our name in
Hmm,
their
hmm.
title, what are some other, I guess, contemporary influences that we could point to, I could point to today, right now, and be like, it's obviously Chicago, don't you know?
Yeah, well, I guess, this is one where Chicago is in the name, or at least, but South Side to me is unequivocally
Mm,
the best show that represents at least the South Side of Chicago. But I
I
think
love
also
that
there's
show.
part, yeah, and there's part, there's certain episodes where they're like, oh, we had to go downtown, oh, we had to do whatever, right? So I don't think it's just the South Side of Chicago, but I think that so many places and so many films and TV shows have tried to do that, and they just haven't been well. Like Shameless doesn't feel like Chicago really to me, but I think that it is a part of Chicago for sure, but not really. It doesn't look like the block side, I have. And even The Shy, it got better after that first season because the first season, it was, sometimes they would film on the west side and say they were on the south side, and people are like, this is not that corner, right?
Mhm.
But that was just that first season. After that, they got a lot better. But I still feel like just a perfectly executed Chicago show is Southside. I have no complaints. All I do is laugh and cry and say, "Oh my gosh, that's how it really is." And so it's just top tier. And of
That
course,
is
it's
a
the
great
show
point.
that many people, like not as many people have watched as some of those other ones that you mentioned.
Yeah. Southside, how did I come to know it? I think it was a coworker at the time mentioned it to me. He wasn't he wasn't black, but he mentioned it to me, and I'm
Yeah.
like, how do you know about this? And I
Right,
watched it,
right, right.
and
And it's just
yeah, I mean,
good.
I've rewatched it, I think twice,
Hmm.
which says a lot because I don't really rewatch things either.
Yeah.
Um, what about I'm trying to think, maybe like fashion wise, this is something that I know that I don't I guess I don't have a great example fashion wise. Like
Yeah.
what is some a Chicago fashion staple or statement that is
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
like transcended beyond our city now? I'm not
Yeah. I think,
sure.
yeah, yeah. I think when I think about that, I do think about Virgil Abloh. Um, and he just really made some historic changes in the industry, like Off-White was his label, and it was, and just a really nice way to bring kind of quote unquote street fashion to the mainstream, right? It was street
Hmm.
fashion, but it was luxury. And when he kind of took on the role of leading menswear at Louis Vuitton, he really kind of kept that to his core, right? It's like it's hip hop, but it's fashionable, but it's high fashion, right? He was able to kind of add a amount of respect to streetwear designers that hadn't really been seen on that scale. And so, he was a Chicago in to Chicago ends type of person, right? Like an architect, graduated from IIT. So like he kind of pulled in all of these very fun Chicago elements, I think, in his work. When he had the exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art, I definitely went to that and was just really impressed with his kind of creative genius. And so, especially, I guess, in recent times when I think about fashion, in Chicago, I always think about Virgil.
Actually, as soon as you said that, of course his name came to my mind. For me, I guess now that you say that, like I do know, like I can say that if okay, what year is it? It's 2025. So I can
Yeah.
say that, yeah, when I think about it definitely within the last decade, specifically within the
Hmm.
last like 5 to 7 years,
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
streetwear, I mean, it has become more mainstream. It's not just like hype beast wear anymore.
Yeah.
Um, Although I sometimes feel like the pendulum is starting to do that thing where it's like, oh, it's Gen Z wear, like everything is for the young kids, everything is Gen Z wear, or whatever the kids who are younger than Gen Z, people younger than my younger sister. I don't know what
And
generation that
Alpha.
is. Gen Alpha? Oh,
Hmm.
wow. Yeah. So they like, kind of try to lump it all into, internet culture, young people
Yeah.
culture. But now that you say that, that is really, I didn't know that he went to IIT. I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about Virgil Abloh. That's
Hmm.
just me.
Hmm.
So, oh, okay. Look at me learning stuff. Um, I, so thinking about, like Virgil pioneering in the fashion sense, or even thinking back to Johnson and Johnson Publishing, thinking back to, I mean, when I think about music and our Chicago artists who right now are somewhat divisive, let's put it mildly. But when I think about all of these things that do encompass Chicago culture, do you feel that our influence, Chicago's influence, is something, I guess, of the past? Do you think that like
Oh,
our
yeah.
influence is still growing, that our influence is yeah, I guess still
Yeah,
growing?
I think it's still growing. I think that people just don't always know where stuff started, right? Like when you think about house music, it's not going anywhere, right?
I just
Um,
went to a house music party on Friday.
exactly, right? Like it is not going anywhere. And people who love house music, now they might know that that's a Chicago thing, right? But a lot of people
Yeah.
just have not known that. Or, when we talk about like drill music, that kind of subgenre of rap has grown where it's a London drill, there's New York drill, right? There's all these different types of things. And it's so much so that you have to argue with some people sometimes to say, hey, it started here, and we know it started here because Chicago rappers got so much flack for, that music, and they were, accused of making the city more dangerous, and like so there's a lot, right? But it's people just don't maybe always know the root of it, but I think that the influence is still growing, right? Like people are still doing drill music. And that was when I was younger. Like it was something that was popular when in the, early 2010s. And so now we're over 10 years later and it's back, but it looks different, but it still started here.
That is actually a great segue into my next question, which is talking about community, really, and the role that community has had, or the role community does have in preserving and promoting Black culture. I mean, just you bringing up drill, I do actually. I think I saw some maybe like 2 months ago where, yeah, the girls were online arguing about where drill really came from, and
Yeah, yeah,
all
and
I
that
did
just
was
shouldn't be an
chuckle.
argument, right? It just shouldn't be an argument because it was here. Like we have the news articles that talk about, right? Like
They're right
it
there.
started here,
And
and
it wasn't
so
that long ago
it wasn't that
either.
long ago.
Do you think that? So I wonder, this is a conversation that I've had with the like friends here and there. Um, and we've talked about how I'm trying to like think of an example, basically how it sort of feels like conversations that we had when we were younger, my friends and I, maybe when we were in high school or in college, it kind of feels like we're having these conversations again,
Okay.
anew. Um, so I guess it leaves me wondering, or it leaves me sometimes, yeah, wondering and asking myself, like, when it's time to, introduce things to a new audience, to people who don't
Mhm.
know, how do we preserve that information and not water it down and not sometimes, well-meaning people give the wrong information. So
Oh,
like how do
absolutely.
we combat some of that, especially as we are heading into, social media sites that don't really check facts anymore and stuff like that. So how do we, I guess, make sure we got the record straight?
Yeah, I mean, I just say that it's up to us, the storytellers, to keep telling those types of stories and to make sure that what we say is accurate and fact checked and looked up. Like if I was looking for, something that happened 100 years ago, sometimes I would just be staying up all night trying to fact check something, and I still probably have some error. Like I'm not perfect, right? But we have to strive for that as much as possible. Not being lazy in our storytelling, and looking for those sources that can give us the real.
What are, I guess, I mean, for it might be a silly question,
Mhm.
but I guess what are examples of, I guess, non-lazy storytelling, or like
Yeah.
how could me, Grace, like
Yeah.
really I guess effectuate some of these things you're saying? What are some tools or things that I need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially as journalists, we talk a lot about primary documents, but we don't always teach people how to look for them, especially the older ones. I think I've learned a lot from my friends who are historians who will go into the archives and look for stuff. And I think that we have to do more of that. We have to be better with our archival research. So if let's say I say something, but I found it in the archives. Don't listen to me. Like, because what if I made a mistake on accident, or what if my interpretation of it is different than your interpretation? So like go to the archives yourself and find it. And so trying to figure it out. And the good thing is that people love to help us with that type of stuff. So if I was having issues, I would go to the library and the archivist at the library would say, "Oh, okay, well this is what might help you, or this is not something that can help you," right? And they are just so helpful, but a lot of times we're not using that. We think we can do everything from behind the computer screen, and we can't. So going back to that kind of the basis of journalism, feet to the pavement, going places, talking to people, asking questions can just get us a lot further than if I only quote, like, let's say, other people who've written stuff and I only quote books from other people, right? Like, and of course, you use those as sources, but we want to try to get as close to the original as possible. If I know somebody was a writer, let me find their writing, let me read their autobiography, right? Um, so, like, one example of that is every time I heard the story of why Ida B. Wells left Memphis, people always kind of say it as if she was scared, like she was ran out of Memphis. That's how people phrase it. And what did happen, right? It is true that a mob had burned down her newspaper office and that they were threatening to kill her. Yes, they were looking to kill her. But she wrote in her autobiography that she was strapped and she was going to go back down there. Like she had left, and when she found that out, she was going to go back, but people and black people had also said, "Hey, we're going to defend you, we'll stand up for you too," right? But she said that she knew that if she went back there would be more bloodshed, and like basically the bloodshed of other people, and so she didn't want people dying or getting hurt protecting her or trying to protect her. But it wasn't that she was just scared, right? And
Mhm.
so that's just an example of, literally, if you read it so many places, it says she was run out. Like that's usually how they write it. She was ran out
Yeah.
of Memphis, right? And she chose. So, like, yes, she was confronted with violence, but she didn't run away from it, right? She made the choice to not go back because she loved her community and she didn't want people to, there to be more bloodshed. That's what she said in her own words in her autobiography. But if you don't hear it from her and if you don't read about it from her, you're going to take the opinions of everybody else telling the very simplified version, because they would be ran out. They would be like, "I'm not going back." I would also. I would be like, "Sorry, I ain't coming back."
Same.
But I'm not Ida B. Wells, and she was not scared. So I think just making sure like those types of distinctions um, are just really important.
That is a really good point. Because even as you're saying this to me now, like I'm not sure. I've never read Ida B. Wells' autobiography. So yeah, the only
Mhm.
story that I know is that yeah, they showed up, burned all her stuff down, and said, "We gonna kill you." And she said, "All right, bye."
Yes,
But it
yes.
turns out that's not
Not the full
actually how
truth.
it that's not the
Right,
full
right.
truth.
Yeah, yeah.
That
And
is
I mean, if
the
that's,
it's the easiest
yeah,
truth to say, but it's,
exactly.
it's
And
not the full truth.
exactly. And so many people, we don't have their point of view. So we don't know. We can only go by, so it's kind of like, how can we get as close to their point of view as possible? Did they write an autobiography? Okay, if they didn't write an autobiography, at least, especially if I'm talking about Black folks, what did the Black papers say at that time? Because we know that how stuff was reported in the Black papers was totally different than how they were in the mainstream papers. So just trying our best, like I think it's not perfect, right? When we're trying to tell stories of people who are no longer here, but I think, just putting that effort in. Like, I can't write about her without reading her autobiography because she has an autobiography.
Yeah, that is really, I mean, that's a great example because yeah, those primary sources or the primary documents, like just tying it all into how do you set the record straight or how do you keep the story as original as possible? And hopefully somebody listening to this is like, oh wait, so she said she was gonna J down with them? Yes, that's
Yeah,
what she
she
said.
said, I'm strapped. Like I gotta like if you she was basically her attitude was basically like if I'm going down, I'm taking some of y'all with me. That was her attitude. But then she
Every
was
time I
like,
learn about
you
this
know,
lady,
exactly, exactly. She was not really scared of anybody. But then, of course, she said, okay, but if I go back, all the people who are also trying to defend me, that puts them in harm's way. And that's really why she left, right? She kind of left to diffuse the situation, um, not because she was scared.
de-escalation 101.
Yeah.
It's a tactic. It's definitely a tactic, in those types of times. And for me, I just feel like there's really nothing I can learn about Ida B. Wells that's gonna make me hate her. Like you can never make me hate
No,
her. That's
never,
truly,
never. My queen.
yeah, when it comes to, and I honestly, when I talk to, other Black lady reporters, Ida B usually is in their top five of
Mhm.
inspirations.
Yeah.
Because I think, and I could be wrong, correct me, similar to the what drove her to do the work that she does or
Yeah.
did, the work that a lot of us do is care for this
Yes.
community, for our
Yes.
community,
Yes.
which brings us back to your book, which is ultimately, you know, I see the book as this thick love letter to the city. I do. Like, I really do see it as, this is a book, by Chicago's daughter for Chicago's kids. Like, this is what it is. Um, I think though, like, where were you like, sitting in your den with a cup of tea and like, what I need to do? Write a book. What was the spark that was like, okay, maybe I can make this a book, or maybe I should
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
developing this?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a career aspiration, and I wanted a book. And when you start working in academia, people always say, well, what book are you going to write? And so I think initially it was just, well, I know about Chicago and I've done a lot of like arts and culture reporting in recent years. Maybe that's where I should start. But then, of course, it grows into something. And I definitely was not sipping tea. I was sipping Hennessy. And so you're just, but you're just you're trying to get into it. So I would like just try to make it feel like a party, light some candles, put some, um vanilla and some lavender in the diffuser. Like I'm trying to make this feel like a party, like this is something fun to write. But it was really because I was like, I want to write something I know.
You can't really go wrong with that. Honestly, I feel I wish more people would do that. Write what they know. Stop writing what you don't, please.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the last question I'll ask about the book specifically. Well, let me not say that because then I would feel bad if I have another question. What challenges did you
Mm.
face while trying to write this book? Like trying to capture all these different, pieces
Yeah.
of different parts of Chicago's culture, the complexity without, oversimplifying it or watering it down. And
Yeah.
without turning it into, I guess, like an ethnography.
Yeah, I felt like it was really difficult to get in as deep as I wanted to. So even during the editing process, if my editor might have asked me a question about something, I'm like, I actually cannot confirm this. I don't know, right? So sometimes you want to add certain details, but like I don't have it. Like I'm talking about stuff that happens. I think some of the stories go back to the 1800s. And so I can only rely on what was written.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I'll read something and I'm like, I don't know if this was true. I don't know if I agree with this. So it's like really trying to figure out what actually happened when nobody is alive for you to fact check with them was just really tough.
That, yeah. Well, how did you get around that? Or yeah, how did you get around it? Is it just accepting that some things
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
can't?
Yeah,
Fact check.
and sometimes I'll say that, like, well, we don't know, but we can infer based off of these later writings or something like that, you know. Or sometimes you're just like, oh, I would like to write about that, and I just can't. Sometimes you just can't write about it.
In the time since you've released the book, what's been the reception? How have people been responding to it? Have people liked it? Are people like, oh my God, thank you? Like,
Yes.
what are people saying to
Yes,
you?
I'm really surprised at how many people have enjoyed this book. I was really nervous for it to come out into the world. You know, you write so many versions of it. It's like writing an article, but times 50, and you have so many edits, and by the time it comes out I really didn't know if it was good or not anymore, right? Like, is it good, was it good? I don't know. And so people liking it or seeing it out in the wild, seeing it on Instagram, people posting it, it's just really fulfilling because um reading takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy. We have a lot of things that take your interest in today's world. And so the fact that somebody would take their time to read a book written by me is just a blessing. So I'm just really grateful.
It's sweet. um I think my next few questions, it's a segment actually. We call it BTS with the guest, behind the scenes. And we're gonna play a game. I think it's related. Word
Okay.
association, Chicago
Okay.
edition though. So
Let's do
I'm
it.
gonna give you some words and I just want you to tell me what comes to your brain as soon as I say it.
Okay.
Um, okay, first word, lakefront.
Water. I feel like that's a bad word association, but that is what I think about. I think about seeing it. Yeah.
Okay, pizza.
Tavern.
Okay, winter.
Snow.
Summertime.
The lakefront.
That is a good answer.
Yeah.
Um, Bronzeville.
History.
Mhm. Harold Washington.
Boss.
That's a good answer. Um, let's see, basketball.
Jordan.
You know what's crazy is I was thinking like Mount Carmel for some reason. Like I didn't even
Oh,
think of
okay.
professional sports. But I didn't go to Mount. I wasn't even around there.
But they
Okay,
were
and
good. They
they
were good when I was
were.
in high school. Yeah.
Let's see, promontory.
Parties.
Um, Jukin.
Hold on one second. You want me? Bye. It's okay.
It is okay because this is a We Are the Culture book event hosted in Chicago, June 26th, interrupting this episode, hosted by another NABJ member. So pull up if you want to find out more.
Let Me Find Out is a collaborative production proudly co-hosted by members of the Chicago chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. Intro video by B Square Productions, led by the talented Brett Brooks. Captions and graphics by CapCut. Post-production by our lead editor, Lee Edwards. This episode was hosted by yours truly, Grace Asiegbu. Follow us on Instagram at NABJ Chicago. And to find our YouTube channel, search NABJ Chicago Chapter and hit that subscribe button. Until next time, keep asking questions, stay curious, and let's find out together.